Tov, today's daf yomi is Bava Basra Nun Ches, Bava Basra 58. Today's daf yomi is dedicated for Yeshua, for the Chayalim, Atzal for the Shulayim, Atzal for Am Yisrael. In this eighth tzara, we're going to start on Nun Ches Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the top. Rabbi Benah, Havi Kamitzayim Ma'arasa. Rabbi Benah used to mark the graves. This daf is all about Rabbi Benah. So Rashbam tells us, first of all, we know that the name Rabbi Benah is related to the name maybe Bina, understanding. He was a very smart rabbi. He had the wisdom of Solomon, as we'll see at the bottom of the Amud. But Rashbam says he was a great man, Adam Gadol v'chashuv haya. Therefore, I have permission to enter into the graves of the righteous. But others didn't have such permission. And he used to enter into their caves and he would measure their graves. Why would he want to know the exact measurements? So that people would not become tamei, that they wouldn't bring the taharos there to become tamei. Another reason why he needed to know where their graves were was because it's a big inyan of going to visit the graves of the tzaddikim. So for that reason, he wanted to know exactly where the graves were. Kimato amarasa da Avram, ask Eliezer Eved Avram. When he came to the grave of Abraham, found Eliezer was the servant of Abraham. Rashbam says, what do you mean? What was Eliezer doing there? So Rashbam says that it says in Meseches Derech Eretz, Zuta, it says there that there were 7 tzaddikim that never died. And Eliezer, the servant of Avram, was one of them. So he was a great tzaddik. And he was standing there. He was standing in front of the gate. Avram, he says, what's Abraham doing at this moment? So Eliezer said to Rabbi Benah, Gane bekanfa de Sarah. He's lying down in Sarah's arms. Bekama ainole beresha. And she's looking at his head. She's looking at the hairs on his head. Meaning he's in a very loving position with his wife, Sarah. Amar, so Rabbi Benah said, Zil Emole, go say to Abraham, Benah Kaya Baba. Go tell him that I'm standing here and ask him for permission for me to enter. Amar, so Abraham responded back to Rabbi Benah, Leo, come up. May the idea, the Yetzer behind Amalek. You don't have to be concerned about going in. You don't have to be concerned it's not modest, because there's no Yetzer in this world, in this next world. Meaning to say, you're not going to see anything inappropriate and you won't think anything inappropriate. So Ayo Ayin V'nafak. So Rabbi Benah went up and measured the graves, and then he departed. When he came to the grave of Adam, because this was in the Maras HaMachpelah, so it's a tradition that Abraham was there with Sarah and Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob with Leah, and Adam and Eve. There's also some traditions that Moshe Rabbeinu was buried there with Zipporah. The Chidah mentions that tradition. Also, Esav's head is the tradition that's buried there. Maybe that's why I needed to know where the grave was, because some want to argue that the graves of the righteous are not Tameh, but Esav's grave was there. So that would transmit Tumah. But regardless, so Kimata Marasadam the Marisha, when it came to the grave of Adam, Yatzta Baskal Va'amra, a heavenly voice came out and said, Nistakalta b'demus diyukni, b'diyuk nistakalta b'demus diyukni. You have looked at a reflection of my image, i.e., Rashbam says Jacob, because we're saying that Jacob was a reflection of Adam, as we'll say in a little bit below. But you can't look at my image itself, and that was Adam. It wasn't exactly Adam, but that was the closest thing we can have to Adam. So Rav Bana says, Habaina, it's Yuni Marata, but I need to measure the grave. So they responded, no. Just measure the outer part of the grave, and just like it is on the outside, it is on the inside. The Amar. This holds the position in Erevin Shnei Batim Zulamal Mizu. If you have two houses, one on top of the other, can be dasal Yonakach be dasal Tapton. Just like the upper one is the lower one. Amar of Bina and Istakalti B'Shnei Akevav. I looked at the two heels of Adam. The domim was Shnei Galgalei Chama. They looked like the two orbs of the sun. So this is a powerful idea also, that first of all, Rashbam says, why were Adam's heels still around? Didn't we say that Adam was told he's going to turn to dust? So he says, well, yeah, 1 hour before the resurrection of the dead, he was turned into dust, and then he was resurrected. What's the message that he looked at the heels, and the heels they were like the sun? And so the idea is that Adam is a reflection of God. Nobody could see God directly. All you could see are the heels. Now, right to this week's parsha, it says, if we listen, even though we just only understand a reflection of it, we can just understand that we're only getting a reflection of God. We still have to obey the Torah. So then the Gemara continues. Sarah's beauty was so great that when you compare anybody to Sarah's beauty, it's like comparing a monkey to a man. And Sarah b'fnei Chava, but Sarah in front of Eve was kekof b'fnei Adam, was like a monkey in front of a man. Chava b'fnei Adam, and Chava in front of a man was like, Chava in front of Adam was like kof b'fnei Adam, was like a monkey before a man. Adam b'fnei Shechina, Adam before the divine presence, kekof b'nei Adam, was like a monkey before a man. Shufra de Rav Kahana, Shufra de Rabbi Yevo. The beauty of Rav Kahana was a reflection of the beauty of Rabbi Yevo. Shufra de Rabbi Yevo, Shufra de Yaakov Avinu. The beauty of Rabbi Yevo was a reflection of the beauty of Jacob. Shufra de Yaakov Avinu, Shufra de Adam Arisha. The reflection of Jacob was just a reflection of Adam. Ahuam Gusha, there was a magician. He was digging up the bodies, the dead bodies, in order to get their clothing, Rashbam says. He came to the grave of Rav Tuvi, son of Masna. Tavsei bedikne. He grabbed a hold of the beard of Rav Tuvi. So, meaning say Rav Tuvi grabbed a hold of the magician's beard. Asa Abaye came to try to get the magician away from Rav Tuvi. Excuse me. So Abai said, please, I'm begging you, Shavke, let him go. So the next year, then the magician came again, and again Rav Tuvi grabbed his beard. Abai again tried to rescue him. He didn't let him go until he brought the scissors and cut his beard. There was a person who said, before he died, he was worried they were going to take his money, so he said it in like a riddle. He said, Chavisa da'afra l'chai barai. So now why are we saying this story? Because Rav Binah is going to solve it, and he was a person of great wisdom. This is the daf about Rav Binah. So there's a person who said, my barrel of earth is going to one son. Chavisa de'garmi l'chai barai. My barrel of bones is going to the other one. And Chavisa de'udra, my barrel of cotton, goes l'chai barai, to my third son. They didn't understand it. Also coming to Rabbi Binah. They came to Rabbi Binah. Rabbi Binah said, Amru isluchu ara. Rabbi Binah said, do you have any property? Amru in. He said to him, yes. Isluchu, do you have animals? He said, in, yes. Isluchu bestraki. He said, do you have clothing? In. That's what he was saying. He's saying the barrel of earth, you get the land, the barrel of bones, you get the animals, and the barrel of cotton, you get the clothing. So there was a man overheard his wife to Ka'amro Abarte. She said to her daughter something terrible. She said, why are you not a little bit more discreet with your basically adultery? Hach Isasa, referring to herself, she says, that woman, Asara Banai Isla, I have 10 sons, and only one of them is from your father. It's from your dad. So when this guy heard this, he was very upset. And Kishachah, when he was about to die, he said to to all of his kids, Kol Nichsai L'chai Bira. All my possessions are going to my one true son. So Lo Yada L'hai Minayu. They didn't know which one of them he was referring to. So also coming to Rabbi Benah, when they came to Rabbi Benah said, Zilu Chavutu Kivra Da'avuchan. He said, go and smack the grave of your father until he'll stand up and reveal to you which one of you is his real son who left the money. So all of them went, but Ahu Davre, but there was a son, Ahu Debre Hava Lo Azal. But the one who was the actual son didn't go. So Ravina said, Amalu Kulchem Kul Nechasai Dahai. He said, "Oh, I see this guy couldn't hit his father's grave. He must be the real son," and he gave him all the money. Rashbam says this is what's called shuda dedaina, that the court can make its own decision based upon its reading of the situation. It's like the wisdom of Solomon. So at that point, achu kurza bemalka. So then the other brothers, they went and they ratted him out to the king. Amre ika gavra. So they said there's a man amongst the Jews, he's taking away the money from people without witnesses, without any facts. They took Rabbi Benah and they tied him up. So his wife went, his wife went, Amralu, she said to the people there, Avdachad Havali. I had one servant, Pasku Aresha, they cut off his head, Upashtu Mishlei, and they took his skin, Va'achu Bisra, they ate his flesh, V'kamau Maya. They filled his skin with water, Umash Gabeil Chaver, and they gave everybody to drink. Look at Yahavili Dmei, Lo Igre. And they didn't give me any money or any rent. So Lo Yadi Maika Amro. So they didn't know. They didn't know what to say to her. So they didn't know what to do. Amri, they said, Nesu l'chakima diyudai v'leima. Let's go say this to the Jews, wise man, and we'll say to him what the story is, and maybe he'll tell us. Karyu Rabbi Benah. So they called Rabbi Benah. Amrahu, Zarnuka Amrahu. He said, yeah, she's talking about it like a canteen of a flask of a leather canteen. And Amri, so basically that's what it was. She had an animal and she took the animal and they skinned it and they turned it into a leather pouch. Amri, so they said, oh, the Chacham Kuliyai. Baba said, well, this is such a smart rabbi, such a smart scholar. Let's put him by the gate. V'nidon dina. Let's make him our judge. Chaza daviksiv ba'avula. So Rabbi Benah saw it was written on the gate, called Dayan the Miskari Ladin Lo Shmei Dayan. Any judge who's called himself to court, meaning who he sued, he can no longer be a judge. Amro, so Rabbi Benah said, well, that doesn't make sense. On the top of 58 feet, a judge could be about to issue a ruling, and then somebody from anywhere will come and issue him a summons, and then he's disqualified. It doesn't make sense. No, any judge who's summoned and then he loses the case and he has to pay, he's no longer considered a judge. And indeed, that's what they wrote. They said, but the elder of the Jews says, called Dayan the Miskri Ladin, they said, okay, the elder of the Jews says any judge who's called to court and he loses the case, he's no longer a judge. Muta ana dam. He saw it was written on the head of every dead person, it says, I am blood, meaning that if you don't let the blood out, that's what kills the people. And Barosh Kol Chayin, on the head of every living person is anachamar, is wine. The pastor says that the blood is bad for you, so you have to get rid of it, and the wine is a good refuah, it's good medicine. Elameata, so says Rav Benah, does that make sense? Enough from the Yigro mace, do not from the Diklo mace. Damakatle, if he falls off the roof or falls off the tree, do you think it was the blood that killed him? No. Visu man de darke And also if you see a guy's about to die, mashku maya, then give him mashku echama, then give him wine to drink, and it'll be okay. So it must be this is what was written. The Rosh Kol Marin Anadam. The head of every illness is blood. The Rosh Kol Asvan, the head of every medication is Anachamar, is wine. And so therefore they wrote that. Baram Sabit Yudai Amri, the elders of the Jews said, Berosh Kol Marin Anadam, Berosh Kol Asvan Anachamar. The head of every illness is blood, the head of every healing is wine. Ba'asar Deleis Chamar, Taman Mitbeu Simanin. In a place where there is no wine, in a place where there is you need a lot of medicine because there's a lot of illnesses. So now the Gemara ends with something that, since we're talking about what's written on gates, it brings in this final coda to this beautiful Agata. On the entrance to Kapotaki, it's written Anpak, Anbag, Antal, three different measurements. Ve'ezu Antal. What are these three measurements? Are all the same. And what are they? Zeu Revi'ah Shel Torah. This is the quarter lug of the Torah. A quarter of a lug is, Rashbam says, an egg and a half. And so why do we need to know this amount? The reason is because we need to know the Daled Kosos, which is a little bit of an interesting thing. Because why does he say the Daled Kosos? We really need to know about a Nazir. So we had this pasuk in this we had this in this week's parasha. It says Eretz Chitas Ora Gefen Teina Rimon Eretz Eit Shemen Udvash, and the Gemara in Brachos tells us Eretz that Kol Shiurei Kasuvba, that all the measurements are written in. And what's the measurement for the Revius? The measurement for the Revius is a Nazir. So why is Rashbam telling us that a quarter of a lug is we need to know for the shiurim of the 4 cups of wine? So Rashbam tells us also we need to know for the Revius of Yain Nazir Alach Moshe Sinai. Then Rashbam tells us that in Mesechas Nazir they count 10 Revius that are Min Torah, and he lists all, and there the Gemara is going to list all of them. So now we go back to our discussion of those things in which you establish are the use of them. Then you're going to have a right to continue to use them, and those things which, even though you've been using it in your neighbor's property, it doesn't mean you have a right to use it. So a marzev, this is called a chazaka of tasrish, a right to use. So the marzev ein lo chazaka, v'yesh lo mekomo chazaka. So the marzev is basically like a down pipe that they put at the end of the gutter, and it allows the water that drains out to go far from the roof, from the wall. So it's marzev comes from the drop that flows. So just because you've been doing it, could easily be moved, so you don't have the right to continue to do it. V'yesh lemekomo chazaka, but the place where you're doing it has a chazaka. The Gemara is going to explain what that means. Hamaskila yesh lo chazaka. Maskila is the gutter that goes on the top of the roof. That is a chazaka. Sulam hamitzri ein lo chazaka. Sulam hamitzri is the Egyptian ladder. We'll see in tomorrow's daf. It's a very small ladder, so you don't have the presumptive right to continue to use it because the presumption is it's very small, easily moved. But a tsuri ladder, which is much bigger, yesh lo chazaka, that you continue to use. Chalon hamitzris is a very small window. Ein lo chazaka, you don't have the right to continue it. Or tzuris yesh lo chazaka. But if it's a tzuris window, you have that chazaka. Ezui chalon hamitzris. What is the chalon hamitzris? Kol shein rosho shel adam yachol ikanes letocha. Such a small window that a person's head can't fit in. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Im yesh la melabein, afal pi shein rosho shel adam, afal pi shein rosho shel adam yachol ikanes letocha reizu chazaka." So Rabbi Yehuda says if it has like a frame around the window, then even if it's very small, it looks permanent, and so therefore it's considered chazaka. Maya marzev. What is this marzev in lo chazaka? What does it mean when we say that the marzev does not have a chazaka, but yesh l'mekomo chazaka, but the place where it is a chazaka? What does that mean? And Gemara is going to give three explanations. The first is Amar Yehuda Amar Shmuel Hachlik Amar Marzev in lo chazaka miruach achas. Yes, this downspout, it doesn't have a chazaka in one direction. Meaning to say, it doesn't have. You have a right to. You don't have a right to drop the water in that specific place. But yesha mekomo chazaka mishtei ruchos. But you have the right to put it there in either one of the two directions. Meaning you don't have a right for that specific spot, but somewhere along the gutter, you have the right. So that's what it means. That's the first approach. Second approach is Rabbi Chanina says, it doesn't have a chazaka, meaning for the size of it, you could shorten it. But you can't get rid of it. Meaning, say you have a right to be there, but it doesn't have the right to be the same size. Third approach of Yerim Bar Abba says, that if the person wants to build underneath it, if the owner of the courtyard, somebody's roof drains into the courtyard, and the owner of the courtyard wants to build under it, right underneath the downspout, then we're going to say he has the right. But what does it mean? The place the guy can't get rid of it. The Gemara challenges this. What do we mean when we say in our Mishnah that it says in our Mishnah the Maraschila, you have a chazaka. This is the gutter. Meaning to say the downspout has no chazaka, but the gutter has a chazaka. Now, Bishlama, Aman Damar Hanach Tarti, according to the first two approaches, it makes sense. Shapir, according to Shmuel Rabbi Chanina, who says the Mishnah makes sense. According to Shmuel, the explanation is that the Marzev has no chazaka, that you can move from one place to another. And so our Mishnah has to tell us, but the Maschila has a chazaka, and he can't force it to be moved because it's fixed. And also Rabbi Chanina, who says that the Marzev has no chazaka, meaning to say you could shorten it. But the gutter has chazaka that you can't shorten it, even though it's jutting out into the airspace of the courtyard. But according to the one who says that if you want to build underneath it, you're allowed to, and according to him, Maskila has a chazaka that the owner of the Maskila that I might have thought that the owner of the gutter would be able to stop the owner of the court from building underneath it, might not go amina, meaning to say, what does the owner of the gutter care if the owner of the courtyard wants to build underneath it? He has no loss for it. And so how do we explain this? The Gemara says, and the Mishnah is talking about a maskila that's built out of stones. To Amarle, he says, I don't want you to ruin the owner of the gutter. Since the owner of the courtyard, don't build underneath my gutter, because if you're going to be building right underneath it, the stones might fall out. But the downspout is not so distinguished in that manner, and even if it was stones, you could build underneath it. Okay, that's today's daf. A big shkoyach to everybody, and we'll pick this up. We'll continue. Shkoyach.